Hey guys, it is officially the end of the 2025 Red Sox season, or at least it has been for over a week by now. And I promised on my finale of Red Sox thoughts that I would be making a tier list. Um, I delayed actually making it by about a week for two reasons. The first being that I had two midterms and a paper in the past week. I was really busy with that and other college stuff. And the other reason being that I maybe want to give myself some time to cool off my emotions and not let what happened in the postseason weigh in too much on how I'm ranking people. But without further ado, we're just going to get in. Um, we're grading everyone who played for the Red Sox this year, no matter if they played for 150 games or for one game. And we're also going to be rating Cora, the manager, Breslow, the chief baseball officer, John Henry, the owner, and the team as a whole. So, first off, I guess we're going alphabetically. Is We have Will Abreu. I think Will Abreu's pretty good solid tier. Maybe not very good. If you see me looking off to the side, I do kind of have notes off to the side on the laptop. But let's see. You know what you're getting defensively. You're going to be getting Gold Glove caliber defense. You've got 95th percentile outs above average, which is very elite. Probably I think the best defensive metrics for a right fielder this year. Um, so you have Gold Glove caliber play out of right field. The guy's got a cannon for an arm. You all saw that play against the Cards on Sunday Night Baseball back in April. He had a similar one against the Royals in July. I was actually at that game. That was just an incredible throw to watch in person. Um, you have a lot of power offensively, but you're definitely going to see that he's very consistent, as was the entire offense for most of the year. You'd have Abreu go through a lot of hot streaks, like the one he had at the very beginning of the season, and then he'd go through a lot of cold streaks, like the one he had at the end of the season. And then his postseason sucked. He struck out a lot mainly because fastballs high and away are his kryptonite, and Yankees pitchers just spam those at him. If he can work on hitting fastballs, I think he'd be a much better overall player because the power is there, but right now he's primarily crushing breaking balls that are low and in, and you throw fastballs high and away, and he really struggles not just to hit them well, but to even get to even make contact with them. So I think solid's pretty appropriate. Next off, Jorge Alcala. He is in our Shadow Realm, get him out of here tier. The funny thing is, if you actually look at Alcala's stats on Savant, which I can pull up, he's going to be in a Cardinals uniform because he did finish the year there. Well, yeah, the numbers suck. He actually had a decent ERA in Boston. He had an ERA of only 3.30, but he still put up negative .2 WAR in Boston. He started off really good. There's a point where he had like a 1 ERA after we acquired him from the Twins, and he looked really good. But he became a train wreck towards the end of the tenure, which is a big reason of why we DFA'd him. And his biggest problem was we put him into games where kind of it was the outcome was decided already, and we just needed somebody to give us one more inning to end the game. And he'd pitch like absolute shit, and he'd force Chapman into the game. He had, I think, an outing like that against the Royals in July, and that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. And Craig was like, "Yeah, we can't have him keep forcing Chapman into the game." And we will talk about pitchers forcing Chapman into the game later on in the list. Next off, Roman Anthony. Yeah, he's elite. I do not care that he's only been in the league for like 70 days. He's very clearly elite. What are you getting from him? Put up 3.1 WAR in only 70 games. Absolutely incredible. He batted, I think, 292 with a near 400 on base percentage. He was basically the best leadoff hitter in the game. You could tell, I mean, just by looking at how much worse the offense was without him. Both before you had him get moved up in June, but then more importantly when he injured his oblique. I mean, the Baseball Savant page speaks for itself. Yeah, he has a lot of whiffs and his strikeout rate isn't good, but everything else is borderline elite. His plate discipline is incredible, which, is something the Red Sox struggle with, especially with how much they struck out this year. And what else do we have? Yeah, no, just looking forward to seeing this guy in Boston for the next decade. Really hope he can stay healthy. He totally has the potential to club 30 to 40 homers a season while batting 300, giving you good defense at the corner outfield. Hope to see him be an MVP contender up there with, Judge and the other favorites. Very clearly an elite category. And not to entertain any counterfactuals, but you do gotta wonder if the team would have put up a different result in the postseason had he been healthy. All right, who's next? Next is Brian Bayo. I'm actually going to put Brian Bayo on very good. I know that's going to be controversial given how the end of his season worked out between his month of September and the postseason. But I think when we look at the larger picture, this was a very good season for Brian Bayo. It was really a breakout year for him in many ways. I believe he finished the season, and I can definitely double check that, with, I believe, a 3.35 ERA. And you could really see that he kind of became a true number two starter for Crochet. I know that the Baseball Savant pages might not reflect that, the fact that he's pretty middle of the line in pitching run value, but he just had an incredible stretch from June through August where he put up a low 2 ERA and the rotation was completely carrying the team. What else do I have on him? Right, yeah. So pretty much their 3-month window, he went 5+ innings in every start, had a sub-3 ERA in June, a sub-3 ERA in July, and a sub-3 ERA in August. So really great numbers for a number 2 pitcher to be putting up. Biggest change for him was definitely his mental game this year. I think if you guys remember last year and in 2023, he'd have these blow-up outings where there'd be a small mistake or an error, and trust me, there are a lot of errors with this Sox team, and it would kind of get into his head, and that mistake would kind of balloon into a blow-up outing. He did not let that get to him this year. He really improved his mental game. You really saw him mature as a player, and it was just so great to see him blossom. Yeah, his September sucked. Yeah, his postseason sucked too. I don't think that Cora should have had such a short leash on him that game, but maybe those are just signs of fatigue. I think if you give this guy the expectation of being a number 3 starter, if you go out and get a number 2 starter, cough cough Joe Ryan, I think Bayo will really flourish in that role. But I think he struggled with his mental game in previous years. He struggled with the expectation that he had to be the ace of the rotation. And when those expectations weren't on him this year, he had a really good season that you were happy to see. Next off, Brennan Bernardino. He gets a solid. I'm not going to pull up his reference page, or his Savant page, but he posted a 3.14 ERA. He struggled in May. He struggled in early June when he was being overused and being thrown out into pretty much every game. But he looked really good down the stretch. Unfortunate that he was injured kind of towards the end. I think he could have been very useful to have out of the pen, maybe over Chris Murphy. Let's see. He had a few good starts as an opener as well. But there's honestly not much else to say about Bernardino. An overall good season, and I'm glad that he didn't completely implode in the second half, which is what he did in 2024. Alright, next off, Breggy. Breggy's definitely elite. He was batting 300 until September. I know people are pretty sour about how he played in the month of September. Don't get me wrong, I am too. But if we look at the bigger picture, 300 batter until September. I believe, can confirm with his defensive metrics. Yeah, still really good defense. He could win a Gold Glove at third. Probably not. They're probably going to give it to McMahon, even though he was in, Colorado for most of the year. But to me, what really makes Breggy elite and what made him so valuable for the team this year was his leadership, which is something that you're not really able to quantify, but it was very clear the positive effect that Bregman's leadership had on this team. The fact that he was a great mentor for the young players, also a great mentor for more seasoned veterans like Duran and Story, and even the front office. Apparently, Craig said that he was helping the front office out. I'm not entirely sure how, but I think it just goes to show how important of a player Bregman was for this team. And we don't know if he's going to opt in for next year. We don't know. Apparently, someone in the Sox front office said that they might not even want Bregman to opt in because they have questions about his longevity. But I think that the leadership that he provides for a very young and talented team is very important. And I think for me, that is why I'm putting him in the elite category, even when the end of his season was not, didn't give you much to write home about. Who is definitely not going in the elite category, however? Walker Buehler. Get him out of here. Notice how we have two people in this category, both of whom were DFA'd. Okay, so Walker Bueller, atrocious 5.45 ERA over across over 100 innings in Boston. It felt like you could never get him to go 5 innings, and he struggled way too much with walking batters. Really put the walk in Walker Bueller. Didn't help that we were paying him as much money as we were. The fact that we gave him $21 million, and then for his 20th, 22nd, and I'm not sure if it got to 24 starts, but an extra 500 grand in bonus incentives for that. And I don't care that he's doing well in Philly. He's still walking more guys than he's striking out. Very clearly, get him out of here. Just, you took a waiver on him. It did not work out. I think it was the right move to get rid of him. Okay. Next off, Nick Birdie. There's not a too small sample size here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a too small sample size here right now. Yep. We're improving this. We're too small sample size. Okay. Yep, so that's something that we're going to be doing. I'm going to try to scroll down a tiny bit so that you guys can see. Okay, well, you guys can't see the players, but I'll be going through all the players. So next off, we have Nick Birdie. He definitely goes into small sample size. He actually dominated in AAA at the start of the year, but he only pitched 5 1/3 innings when we actually moved him up to the bigs. He was solid. He didn't give up an earned run over that time, but definitely not enough of a contributor to actually count him on this list in any meaningful way. Next off is Isaiah Campbell. Another big get him out of here. Isaiah Campbell's just an atrocious player. I don't mean to be dumping on him, but he was awful last year. He was still awful this year. I dreaded him the second that he was called up here because I remember when Vladdy hit like a 470-foot like tape measure shot off him last year, and I'm like, he's gonna do that shit again. And he basically did do that stuff again. His ERA was over 7. He couldn't finish games. He forced Chapman into the game way too many times, and you never want to force your closer into a game where he doesn't have to pitch. And that proved to be problematic and cost you wins down the road, because we had that finale against the Marlins where Campbell forced Chapman in the previous game. He couldn't pitch in the finale. Weissert comes in, and Weissert does what Weissert does, which is blow saves in one-run games. And let's just say I was not very happy after we lost that game, because it shouldn't be a game you were losing, and it was a game that you lost the previous day when, you had a 5-run lead going into the 9th, and Isaiah Campbell gave up 3 runs, made it a 2-run game, and forced Chapman to finish the job. Just what I'm saying. Alright, next off, KC, Christian Campbell. Love the kid. I think that he's got a future in Boston, but unfortunately this year I can't put him anywhere other than he sucks. I think the reasons why will probably speak for themselves. He had a really good start in April, felt like he was getting on base twice a game, he was batting over 300, and then the month of May hit, and everything fell apart for him. I think for him the worst part is it didn't seem like he was ready for the major leagues, at least defensively. He was absolutely atrocious at second base. He put up negative 10 outs above average. We can pull up those numbers right now. They're not pretty. I think this is in part a result of the fact, only negative 9 outs above average. But I think this is a result of the fact that he didn't really play one position in the minors, and we kind of expected him to fill the gap at second, whereas maybe his athleticism would lend him better to a corner outfield, and obviously we don't need one of those. But unfortunately, it just wasn't a great bout in the major leagues for him. And I'm still not sure if I agree with having Nick Sogard play over him come September. I'm not sure if I agree with having Nate Eden play over him. But I get the idea, the fact that all of his power disappeared after he hurt his ribs towards the middle of the year. Anyways, not a great rookie campaign from him, but I'm really excited to see how he looks this upcoming year, because he has a lot of potential, and I think he could be the right-hand power bat that this team really needs right now, and that you're probably not going to get because we all know you're not signing Pete Alonso, no matter how much Lou Merloni begs for it on Twitter. Next off, Tristan Casas. Yeah, I know he didn't play much. He played enough for me to put him in He Sucks, though. I predicted that he was going to have a breakout year, and instead he had a terrible April, and then he got injured. He put up -3 outs above average at first in only a month, which is terrible. The fact that you can record those numbers in only 1 month isn't great. And he batted under 200 for a guy who I thought had the potential to be a top 10 bat in the league. We don't even know if he's going to be the move in 2026. We might have Lowe starting at first over him. We might have Romy starting at first. We might go out and get Pete Alonso. But I think something that Craig made very clear at his end-of-year press conference is that Tristan Casas is not necessarily going to be our first baseman moving forward. And I think that is a testament to how disappointing this season was, especially given that the guy can't stay healthy, which is not great. Moving on, we have Aroldis Chapman. Very clearly elite. You know, this guy, storied closer. And he had the best fucking season of his career. I just have to pull up his Savant page because it is beautiful and I feel like we have to appreciate it. This shit is absurd. It is a sea of red. The only things that he's below average in are ground ball rates, which is true, he allows a lot of fly balls, and average exit velo. He allows some hard hit contact. But let's just talk about Aroldis Chapman. Connor Wong fixes his command at the start of the season, and now he's walking so many fewer batters than he used to walk. You look, his walk rate is 74th percentile, not as elite as his other peripheral statistics. But you look, last year, first percentile walk percentage. Second percentile 2 years ago. Really, he wasn't qualified in 2022, but still bad. But you can see there's a very clear trend of Chapman walking a bunch of batters. And now he still has the elite stuff he's always had, but now he has the command that he didn't always have. And that was what made him pretty much unhittable this year. You know, the expected batting average of opponents off him was 182. I think in actuality, opponents only hit like 115 off of him. Absolutely incredible. He had that, 50 consecutive batters without giving up a hit streak. That culminated with him getting his ERA all the way down to .98, which for that late in the season, it was late August when that happened. Absolutely incredible. Between the end of May, when he blew a save against the Brewers, between then and mid to late September, he only gave up a single run, a solo home run to JT Realmuto, which wasn't... He got the blown save for that, but it wasn't in a save situation. That was in the 8th inning. And it's just, we didn't expect this from Chapman. We didn't think he'd be our closer going into the season. We were hoping it would be Slayton or Hendricks. We'll talk about both of them later. But now he's going to be our closer for the next 2 years, hopefully. We've signed him to that extension. We have him for next year. And, if he pitches, I believe, 40 innings, that's the condition for the 2027 option to be invoked. But best closer in the league, without a doubt. I think best closer that this team has seen since maybe, I think it was 2017 or 2018 Kimbrel, and then go way back to one of Pap's seasons from like 06 or 07, where he put up the .96 ERA. But he also did not melt down in the postseason. He had an iconic 4-out save in Game 1, and he looked sharp in Game 3 too. Unfortunately, we didn't move on from that series, but I feel like Chapman had such a good year that it warranted me rambling about it for the past 3 minutes, because he was just he was everything you were hoping for and then more. Who was not everything you were hoping for and then more? Cooper Criswell. Too small sample size. Barely played this year. Obviously, he had that incredible start against the Astros on the Apple TV Friday Night Baseball, where he completely matched Hunter Brown. They both went 7 innings of 1-run ball. But unfortunately, he just wasn't healthy. I think he could have been very helpful down the stretch. Maybe could have even gotten the nod to start Game 3 of the wild card round if he were healthy. I think a lot of people forget that he was actually really solid in 2024. He could have given you, he could have been a nice element of depth to your rotation had he remained healthy. Unfortunately, he didn't. Next off is Garrett Crochet. Next off is Garrett Crochet. Only one player gets MVP nods for the team. Without a doubt, Garrett Crochet. If you guys wanted an ace, well, that's exactly what you got when you traded for Garrett Crochet. I think we just have to rattle off the stats. We have to pull up his Savant page here because it's a sea of red. Absolutely beautiful. Let me just read off the stats here. 18-5 record, 2.59 ERA, led all of MLB with 255 strikeouts, led the American League with 205 and a third inning pitched. What you'll see is his sweeper really came through as his elite put-out pitch. That's the reason why he's got a 99th... Oh, sorry. This is the reason why he has a 99th percentile breaking run value. It is because that sweeper was flat out unhittable this year. What you'll actually see is his four seam's below average. People like to talk about Garrett Crochet's four seam. Actually generated a run value of -8, but he made up for it with his cutter and his sinker, both of which were very good pitches this year. Though hopefully he can fix that four seam. But ultimately, I think the four seam, the reason why it deteriorated between last year and this year, was because he really developed a full arsenal, and he started to lean more on the cutter and the sinker towards the end of the year. And his sweeper was so good that he could, reliably go to that to get strikeouts. He'd probably win the Cy Young this year if it weren't for Skubal, but very clearly such a paramount player to this team's success. Whenever the team was on a slide, whenever you needed a win, you knew that you could just rely on the pig. When you go into war, you want a war pig to lead you. And the only reason we won a postseason game was because he went out there and shoved and threw 117 pitches and struck out 11 in the Bronx, giving up only one earned run. Which he did 2 times during the season, actually. He did that in August and he did it in the postseason. And, I'm just so excited to have this guy on the team for the next 5 years because you've got your ace for the future, and if he stays healthy, I think we can expect a lot more winning and a lot more success. We have our ace, and that's something that we haven't had since 2017 Chris Sale. Okay, enough talking about Garrett Crochet. I could probably rant about him all day. Great player, love the guy, but we've got to move on to controversy. Rafi Devers. He's going with elite. We're only grading players based on their tenure in Boston, and Rafi Devers had an elite tenure in Boston. Yeah, we're still frustrated by the trade. Yeah, we made the postseason without him. Yeah, we started winning without him. But, come on, between him DHing and Masa Yoshida, no offense to Yoshida, I'd rather take this guy. Imagine a lineup with Roman Anthony and Rafi Devers being 1 and 2, and then you have Bregman and Trevor Story 3 and 4. That's an intimidating lineup. No pitcher is going to want to go through those 4. He had an on-base of over 400 while he was in Boston. He was an RBI machine. And I feel like the offense only bounced back after he left because you moved up Roman Anthony. And it does kind of suck knowing who we traded him for. We'll get into Kyle Harrison and Jordan Hicks later, but it was a really dumb trade. This team, contrary to what Craig suggested, would probably be better off if we still had Rafi Devers. That feels like a pretty common opinion among Red Sox fans. Alright, next off, Hunter Dobbins. Well, I think I'm going to put Hunter Dobbins in solid. I understand if you want to put him in average, but I think he's slightly above average, and I feel like that's kind of what the solid category is about. He's more than you could ask, or, he gave you more than you could ask for, a number 5 starter who you moved up in, April as a result of injury. He had just 2 great showings against the Yankees where he outdueled Rodon both times. It was unfortunate that he tore his ACL. Still blame Abraham Toro for giving him a bad throw that put him in that position. But I feel like you could have really used Dobbins down the stretch. I think we should expect him to be a part of this rotation for some significant period of time in 2026. And one final note, I love how he's being active on Red Sox Twitter. I love that he's responding to, Jared Carabas's posts and whatnot. I think that's great. It makes me love the guy. Hope to see him in 2026 dealing for Boston. Jarren Duran. Okay, Jarren Duran is a really interesting one. I wanted to put him in average, but he put up 4.5 WAR this year. I feel like that has to merit him going in solid at least. Yeah, I mean, he put up over 4 WAR, sure. He only batted .258. He clearly regressed from last season, but we all expected that to happen because Duran just had a Cinderella season last year. I have clicked on Carlos Duran. That's probably not going to show me who I want on Baseball Savant. I have no idea who this guy is. He's got an 81 ERA in the third of it. He gave up a run in the third of an inning pitched. Let me actually get the right name pulled up, because I feel like it's worth going through his Baseball Savant page. Yeah. So when we say he regressed, yeah, his batting run value is still above average. He only batted 256, though. I had 258 in my notes, but they must be a bit outdated. Clearly regressed from last season. Most notable was his defense. Look at his defense last year. This is absolutely elite. He was playing center field. This year, you move him to a corner outfield, and he just put up not great defense at all, which really pissed me off. He was a menace when he got on the bases, which we knew, but he didn't do that as much this year as he did last year. He really struggled against lefties, especially with off-speed pitches, and you saw that when you were starting to move him to 7th or 8th in the lineup against lefties, especially during the postseason. Speaking of, the postseason was atrocious. He had no offensive production, and the defense was terrible. I mean, he does not know how to read balls off the bat when he's playing in left field. And I love the guy. I think Jarren Duran's a great person. If he can learn to keep the thoughts and words of others out of his own head. I feel like when he gets in his own head, then that starts to change, but we're not here to talk about that. I love Jarren Duran. I love the person Jarren Duran. We need him to bring it back next season, and there's a chance we might trade him during the offseason. We'll really have to see, but when he's on his A game, he's a great contributor to the team. Connolly Early, still in his Portland Sea Dogs hat in this picture, actually. Connolly Early's also getting the nod for solid. I feel like he's definitely earned that. Yeah, he barely played this season, but he was electric. He struck out 11 guys in his debut. Not everyone can do that. I literally have a note saying it sucks that Weiser prevented him from winning his Fenway debut. That's true. He had a great, obviously he had that debut on the road against Oakland where he struck out 11. Then his next start at Fenway, he looked good, and then Greg Weiser came in and shit the bed. But what I really like about Early, his secondary pitches look really good. He really knows how to use his change. He knows how to use his curve. He knows how to use his slider. And he knows how to let all of those pitches play off one another and how to play off the fastball. I really look forward to seeing him pitch in 2026. I think that his postseason performance earned him a spot on the roster for next year. Yeah, it didn't look great. He was not the reason we lost Game 3. He gave up very little hard contact, but he just got unlucky, and his defense completely let him down. And I just want to see him pitch next year. I have a lot of confidence in Connolly Early for next season. Next off is Nate Eden. Nate Eden's definitely the first average on this list. He was serviceable down the stretch. When Anthony and Abreu got injured and you all of a sudden went from having a surplus of outfielders to not having a guy who could play right field every day. He was an absolute weapon on the base path. I think he had 96th, 97th percentile sprint speed. I'm still not going to forget that thing he did against the Rockies, though, where he got the ball at third base and then proceeded to be an absolute idiot and not make an attempt to tag out the runner, and then he didn't get the throw off in time. And I don't know if you guys know the clip I'm talking about, but it was a really silly defensive play that he made that ultimately did not matter, but I just thought it was funny to bring up. And Kyle Hudson might hate him because every time he should get sent home, he doesn't get sent home. And when you're losing 2 games over the course of the season, including a postseason game, over not sending your fastest player from third to home, I don't know, but that's more of a Kyle Hudson thing, and to be honest, we are not evaluating our third base coach on this tier list. Okay, next off is good old Dick Fitz. We got Richard Fitz here. Gonna put him in below average. Definitely not the guy you were hoping him to be. Yeah, in retrospect, I wish we could have traded him instead of Quinn Priester, because I know that we had both of them, and it turns out Quinn Priester had a really good year in Milwaukee. But at the time, that was clearly the right move. Like, we weren't going to fix Quinn Priester. I have no idea what the hell the Brewers did to make him good. I think the problem was, for Fitz, he struggled to strike guys out, even with good velocity, which he had. And he got hammered on his breaking pitches. It felt like every time he was throwing an off-speed or a breaking pitch, it was getting hit hard. He looked really solid in the final 2 innings of his final 2 outings against the Orioles when we played them in Baltimore. And then, unfortunately, he injured himself. I believe it was a pec strain, and he didn't come back from that. He could have been good bullpen depth, especially from the right hand side down the stretch. But we love Dick Fitz. I think we're still trying to figure out where he fits into the equation for 2026. Um, Next off is Michael Fulmer. I have no idea who Michael Fulmer is. I checked his baseball reference. Apparently, this guy won Rookie of the Year back in 2016. So he was relevant within the past decade, apparently. He played in only one game for us. Apparently, that was the Tanner Houck blow-up game in Tampa Bay. And Fulmer gave up 3 runs over 2 2/3 innings in that game. Which is why I'm putting him in he sucks. That's probably why we DFA'd him after he only pitched in one game. Not much else to say about him. Speaking of not much else to say, the password, Yostinson Garcia, he's very clearly going in not enough sample size. He only played in 5 games. He only had 9 plate appearances and 1 hit. The funny thing is, I was actually at his debut game, because I live in New Jersey and we were playing the Yankees in the Bronx. That was a squirrel game where the squirrel ran onto the field and everyone made a big deal about it, even though it was not a big deal. Especially at the stadium, no one gave a shit about it. But as far as notes on the password, struggled a lot with breaking balls. But he's probably not quite ready for the big league yet. I'm still not sure if we should have brought him up when we did, or if at all. That's really all there is to say. We'll see what the move is for the password in the off season and going into 2026. Next off, Giolito, definitely going in our solid tier. Now, we had no idea what we were going to get from him. A guy coming off of an elbow surgery entering his age 30 season. Who knows? And yeah, the season started off terribly. Every other start was a blow-up start. You had him pitch terribly against the Braves, then again against the Angels. Then he did that a few more times. And then June, July, and August, this summer, he just completely flipped the switch. He was like Bale. He put up a sub-2 ERA over those 3 months. He did struggle a lot with walks, though, especially towards the end of the season. But he was still an above-average pitcher. And is a very important contributor to the team. The fact that the fact that he was your number 3 starter and he was giving you incredible production for half the season is a big reason of why you made the playoffs. He actually had the best ERA of his career this year. It was even better than, his breakout 2019 season where he, was nominated for the All-Star game and he placed in Cy Young voting. And to me, can you believe that this guy's only 30? It feels like he's an old soul by now, and unfortunately, I don't think he's going to be on the team next year. It just doesn't feel like the direction we want to be moving in. But that's all I have to say about Giolito for now. Oh, and he's a great guy too. Super chill human being. Love to listen to his post-game pressers. Next off, Romy Gonzalez. I want to put Romy Gonzalez in the really good tier. I know people are going to be a bit off-put by the fact that I'm putting a glorified platoon bat in the really good tier, but he just had an incredible season. He batted about 300 through nearly 100 games. He gave you solid defense at both second and first, which you still have no idea what you're doing with those 2 positions for next year. And sorry about that. I need to get some water. And I think what you saw is a guy who was really only platooning against lefties in the past became a very well-balanced bat against righties. I believe he actually batted 290 against righties throughout the season. He even got 3 hits off of Paul Skeens, which only 2 players in the MLB have done that. One of them is Romy Gonzalez. And what else do I have to say? Yeah, still struggles at breaking pitches, but I'm really happy to see what a good year he had. And his postseason sucked, but thankfully for him, we are not weighing that into our evaluation. Next off, Luis Guerrero. Luis Guerrero is going to below average. Low-key forgot he pitched this year because he didn't throw the ball after May. But yeah, 4.15 ERA, 133 WHIP in 13 games. That's not great. He had more walks than strikeouts. That is beyond concerning, especially for a relief pitcher. And there's not much else to say about him, so we're going to move on. David Hamilton. David Hamilton is also below average. I'm being nice and not putting him in he sucks. But it was a really disappointing season for a guy that you really had high expectations for going into the year. He essentially became a platoon second baseman against righties, and a pinch runner when needed. But, the guy was most dangerous when he got on base, which he did a good amount last year because he's really fast. He's going to steal a lot of bags. He didn't get on base at all this year. He barely batted above 200. His on base was below 260. His OPS was below 600. And because of that, you felt like the only time where he would be on base is if you were having him pinch run for someone else. Defense is whatever. He's like the most average defender in the world. I'm not going to forgive him for not being able to lay down that bunt in San Diego. We had a lot of bad extra inning losses, but when you're losing because someone tries to bunt 3 times and they can't get the bunt down because they're trying to bunt for a hit instead of bunting to get the runner over, that to me was like, what are we doing, David Hamilton? And to me, the fact that Seattle offered a 1-for-1 trade for him for Luis Castillo and we turned it down, we should have done that trade while we had the chance. But we are, for better or worse, with David Hamilton on our team still. Next off, Kyle Harrison. Too small sample size. The Red Sox organization has to hate this guy because to me it's very puzzling why he didn't get called up until September. We know that he retooled his entire arsenal in AAA. He brought back his cutter, but walks are still a problem in AAA. We kind of saw that when he pitched a bit towards the end of the year, but we definitely didn't see him pitch enough to make a full judgment. Liam Hendricks. One of the greatest human beings in the world. Great guy, does a lot for charity. Super funny too. But he's fucking dog shit at baseball, or at least was dog shit throughout 2025. This is the guy we thought was going to be our closer going into 2025. He was downright awful. In only 14 games, he put up a 650 ERA. He complained about not being put in enough high leverage situations and not having us pitch him enough. Why do you think, man? You put up a 650 ERA, and, I'm happy that he did not pitch after May because I do not think that he was productive in any way, shape, or form. Speaking of not productive in any way, shape, or form, Jordan Hicks. No, he's not going, he sucks. He's going and get him out of here. I should create a whole new tier just to put Jordan Hicks in for how bad he was. He put up negative 1.1 WAR with Boston, which is absurd that you're putting up negative 1 WAR after pitching only 18 innings. Speaking of, he gave up 17 runs and 12 walks in only 18 and 2/3 innings. He had a whip of nearly 2. He was allowing 2 base runners every inning. And you knew the game was over when you brought him in to pitch, because he couldn't keep competitive games competitive. He would let the other team run away with it. It pisses me off just to think about him. It pisses me off to know that we're paying him $12 million every year through 2027. That's like $36 million we are not getting back. I mean, thank God that we Phantom IL'd him. He's terrible. I don't know what else to say. We could have asked for any other player on the Giants for Rafi Devers. We could have asked for a handful of magic beans. It would have been better than Jordan Hicks. The fact that this is the guy we got for Rafi Devers makes it so much worse. And to me, it's funny. I'm laughing because of how terrible of a player he is. And I just want to move on because I'm just going to get mad thinking about Jordan Hicks. So we're going to move on to Tanner Houck, who unfortunately, I love Tanner Houck. He had such a great season in 2024. But with all due respect, he was fucking dog shit this year. Yeah, ERA of 8 across 9 starts. He had 2 different starts where he gave up 10 earned runs over only 2 1/3 innings. And the thing is, I can't hold it entirely against him because he was injured while pitching. He did end up getting Tommy John. And 2024 showed us how much of an impact he can make while he's healthy. So we'll see what we do with him in arbitration. But if we choose to keep him on the team, we'll hope that he rests up in 2026 and that by 2027 he's ready to give us the same caliber of season we saw from him in 2024. Because Tanner Houck has showed you that he can be such an important asset of your team when he's healthy. Zach Kelly. Zach Kelly's below average, but I'm not going to put him in he sucks because I think Zach Kelly is better than a lot of people give him credit for. His ERA was around 4.40, which definitely below league average, but that was mainly the result of a few bad outings he had in the beginning of the year in April, and he was actually pretty solid after that. I think people found it puzzling that he was called up in September, but it turns out that he had a pretty solid month of September. And he was a decent righty arm out of the bullpen, all things considered. I think that we're not ready to give up on Zach Kelly because we've seen flashes of brilliance from him mixed with admittedly not great stretches. But I think overall, I think we're hoping that we can turn him into a more reliable guy that we hope to use in more high leverage situations in 2026 and after the fact. Realized I've been recording for 40 minutes and we're not even halfway through the list. We're gonna try to speed things up a tiny bit here. Next off, we have the legend of Low Vaughn, Nathaniel Lowe, and I'm actually going to put him in solid. I think people forget that he was actually pretty good in Boston. He batted about 280 while playing okay defense, but he was a good platoon at first with Romy. It was great that we were able to to claim him for cheap off of waivers. That kind of made up, but didn't entirely make up for the fact that we didn't fix our first base problem at the deadline. To me, it was just kind of the thing that he needed a change of scenery, that Washington just wasn't doing it for him. And you could just tell that he belonged in Boston when he jacked that game-tying home run in his Fenway debut against the Orioles. But we're not going to talk about how that game ended because we're happy. We're in our good place right now. We're not going to talk about how that game against the Orioles ended. But what we are going to do is move on to the second half of our tier list, i.e. the oops, I forgot to write notes for the rest, so I think I'll be improving from here on out. We have Steve Matz here. I think Steve Matz is going to go in. I want to put him in very good because he actually was pretty good. I'm going to put him in solid though. I think it's fair to put him in solid. Finally, a trade deadline acquisition that actually worked out for Breslow. He was solid in Boston. If you look at his savant, I think that what you'll find is the ERA is pretty decent. It's a 3.05 ERA. What I love is he really does not walk anyone. Unfortunately, he can really only pitch against lefties. I think righties bat over 300 against him. But he was solid. He looked good in Boston. I think that that was a positive trade and that Matz contributed in a positive way to this team after the deadline. Your trade deadline acquisition that did not contribute in a solid way, however, is Dustin May. And I'm going to do Dustin May a solid and only put him in he sucks instead of get him out of here. Maybe if he pitched more, I would put him in get him out of here. But he pitched just enough so that we know that he sucks. I believe May only had 4 starts for Boston after the All-Star break. He had one really good start against Houston where he went 6 shutout innings and struck out 8 batters. And he had 3 downright dogshit starts where you're like, why are we putting in Dustin May? He clearly doesn't know what he's doing. Classic Dustin May move is giving up a home run and looking at the ball leave the park like he saw a ghost. Like he was like, I don't know how they hit the ball out. You're not a good pitcher, man. We kind of tried to retool his arsenal. We were like, yeah, we think your cutter might be a weapon pitch. It was not. It continued to get hit pretty hard. I think it's a shame because the Houston start made me think that there was a lot that you could do with Dustin May and that he could be a very good contributor down the road. And he sucked. We Phantom I'd him. And that was kind of that. Bad move, Breslow. Should have gotten Joe Ryan instead. All I'm saying, we'll move on. Alright, next off is Marcelo Meyer. Yeah, I think Marcelo Meyer is going to be the epitome of average. He gave you actually really good defense at both third base and second base. But for me, the problem is he's in the way that Christian Campbell wasn't ready for the big leagues defensively, I don't think Meyer was ready offensively. The fact that he can really only he can only be a platooner against righties because he does not know how to hit off of lefties. He's got a lot of power, but unfortunately he can only use it against right-handed pitchers, and when a lefty came into the game, it felt like you had to take him out and pitch hit. He's going to be a very big part of this Red Sox core moving forward, I think. I'm not sure what position you're going to put him at. I think it makes sense to have him play short and to move Story to second if Story opts in. But then again, it isn't great to have to do a platoon bat at shortstop, but Meyer can't hit off of lefties. You'd love to watch him develop into kind of fulfilling that kind of role. And hopefully he'll be able to stay healthy over a full season. We know that he struggled with injury this year. He struggled with injuries in the minors before. But I think that Meyer's a solid player all around. And I think that he could be a big contributor next year. Okay, next off is... I actually have no idea who the fuck this is. Who? Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna have to look up who this is because this is a guy that like I swear to God I do not recognize. So I'm actually going to pull up my I'm gonna pull up my handy dandy guide here, and we're gonna figure out who the hell this guy is. He's probably gonna go in one of the bottom tiers, given that I have no idea who he is. But to me, it's funny that I can watch 150 to 155 guys and not know everyone who played for our team. So we are going to take a look and figure out who the hell this guy is. Um. Oh shit! This is Giovanni Moran. Okay, I actually do remember Giovanni Moran pitching. And from what I remember, he wasn't that good. So I feel like the best thing that we can do is probably put him in. I'm actually looking what tier he should probably be in. Yeah, no, I think Moran can belong in the below average tier. I know we had him pitching, I think, late August, early September. I felt like he didn't contribute much. I felt like he had one kind of blow up outing where he didn't look good. I just think there's really not much more to add about him. And then after that, we have Chris Murphy. I think Chris Murphy's the epitome of average. He had some really good outings where he was just dominating and like nobody was hitting his curveball. And then he had other outings where he could only throw curveballs because he just lost command of his four seam and he was walking everyone and he was having like big blow up outings. I think that like all around weighed itself out to like a decent 3.25 ERA. But I feel like we'd be lying to ourselves if we called Chris Murphy anything better than average because he's kind of the epitome of average. What's better than the epitome of average, however, is Carlos Narvaez. And I'm thinking of where I want to put Carlos Narvaez. Because I feel like you could put him in very good. I feel like you could put him in solid. I want to put him in very good for a few reasons. Yeah, if you look at the batting, it wasn't great. Like, he started off batting 280, and by the end of the season, he was only batting 240. You do have to remember, he's a catcher. He's a rookie. This is his first time playing as much as he did. His defensive metrics were really good. I feel like there is some merit to pulling up his Baseball Savant page just for the defensive metrics. Because I think that he was really underrated as a catcher, and I think that people don't realize that. You look at that, caught stealings above average, 90th percentile. He threw out more runners than any other catcher did this year. He was also well above average in blocks above average, framing, and pop time, which was really refreshing, and you really needed that given the season that Connor Wong gave you. And to me, the fact that we learned that he's going to be undergoing meniscus surgery, the fact that he played the second half of this season on a partially torn meniscus and managed to be as average as he was despite that injury, I think, there's a reason why people are calling him the captain of your team. I think Carlos Narvaez is a very well-earned, very good. Next off, we have, oh boy, Sean Newcomb. Should I put Sean Newcomb in below average, or he sucks? I'm actually going to put him in average. I think he's better than people realize. There's really not much to say about Sean Newcomb. He pitched, a bit at the beginning of the season, first in your rotation, and then in long relief. It wasn't great. It wasn't terrible. It was the definition of average. If you actually look him up on on Baseball Reference or on Baseball Savant, you're going to find that the stats are actually better than you'd think. And if we just give that a minute to load, yeah, these are the epitome of average stats. He actually put up a 2.73 ERA throughout the whole season, but that was mainly because he pitched really well in Oakland, or I suppose in Sacramento, after we traded him. But there's not much more to add. I think he's a pretty average player. Cedon Rafaela. You see, Cedon's tricky because if you asked me going into the All-Star break, when he was batting 271 and doing the shit he did on defense and hitting walk-off homers off Pete Fairbanks, I'd put him in elite. But then you realize that he batted like 180 the second half of the season. And that's not even very good. That's only solid. I don't care that he put up 4 WAR this year. I don't care how good his defensive metrics are. We can look him up. I think what you see that you're going to get when you take a look at his metrics is the batting's terrible, the base running's good. Yeah, and obviously the fielding's elite. Like, he's going to win a gold glove. I think he should win a platinum glove. I'm sure other people would throw Bobby Witt Jr. in there for winning the platinum glove. But, oops. These numbers are crazy. Especially when you consider he also has a cannon for an arm. Like, he's not that big of a guy, but he's got an absolute cannon of an arm. His defense is great. Defense continued to be great down the stretch. But to me, I just can't justify putting him any higher because of how ineffective he was at the bat. Or, behind the plate with the bat in his hand. Yeah, he gave us a few really special moments. The walk-off against Tampa, I'll remember. I'll remember the go-ahead homer against Baltimore in the ninth. And, of course, we'll remember a playoff clinching walk-off triple. Has that ever happened before? Has anyone ever clinched the playoffs by hitting a walk-off triple? To me, that's incredible. But he just wasn't reliable the second half of the year at all behind the plate. The fact that you had games where you were pinch hitting Nick Sogard for him because you did not trust him to put a ball in play. I feel like a player like that can't be put above solid, no matter how good their defense is. And I know it averaged out. I know he finished the season batting in the low, 242-ish or something. He showed us that he has the potential to be an elite defender and bat 270, and I'm really excited to see him in center field next year again because I think that this season was, a good starting point to build off of, but I'm hoping to see more offensive production moving forwards. All right, Rob Refsnyder. I want to put Ref in solid. I think I'm going to have to put him in average, though. He's known as a lefty killer. He wasn't as much as he has been in the past. When you put him in the field, he didn't look pretty. It felt like every time he dove for a ball, he'd hurt himself and you'd have to take him out of the game. Yeah, he had that 460-foot bomb in Oakland, but I think you were hoping for a bit. I think you were hoping for a bit more from Refsnyder this year. Still a good contributor, but not as good as any of his previous seasons have been in Boston, in my opinion. Okay, I think now we're getting towards the end. We're on the We are on the final row of players, so we are almost there. And we have who is it? This is Blake Sabol. Blake Sabol. Is he a? I'm checking my notes. Did I put him in? He sucks. I have no idea where I put Blake Sabol. I'm putting him in. He sucks. Blake Sabol. He caught a few games for us. While Wong was injured. Yeah, he just wasn't that great. There's nothing more to say. There's a reason why we shipped him off somewhere or DFA'd. I think we DFA'd him. Yeah. Speaking of catchers who weren't good, Ollie Sanchez. No, not get him out of here, but he sucks too. I think he maybe had one plate appearance in Boston. He did not get a hit in that singular plate appearance. But to me, I don't care about, the plate appearance thing. To me, the big thing is that Chapman gave up a grand total of 3 runs in the second half. Great. We knew Chapman was really good this year. 2 of those 3 runs came in the only 2 innings that this guy was catching. And to me, that shows that I don't think he's great at calling pitches for pitchers. The fact that he didn't have the chemistry with Chapman that Wong or Narvaez had. And we don't know how that would carry over to other pitchers because I don't think he caught for anyone other than Chapman. But for me, the fact that he made an elite pitcher have an ERA of 9 in the innings he caught for him, while also only having a singular at bat, which he did not get on base for, I've just got to put him in. He sucks for that. Justin Sladen is next, and he's going to be a tricky one because he had a really interesting year. I think ultimately it levels out to average. If you look at his Baseball Savant page, Savant is a big fan of Justin Sladen, and I can see why. But for me, is the idea that he pitched, he had that really bad week where he lost, those back-to-back games in Toronto back in April. But at the same time, he was kind of pitching all right and just getting unlucky. He had that ball that Vladdy hit out for a home run, where he got him to chase outside of the zone, below the zone on a full count, and Vladdy just happened to get a bat on the ball and drive it out. You can see there's a lot of red here on Baseball Savant. Obviously, he was out of the season with, I believe, a bone bruise for, 3 months, and it took forever to diagnose that. And then when he came back, he actually looked pretty solid. He was getting confident in using his fastball again, which, his fastball is his best pitch. And you could see that when he was starting to strike out more guys. and also when he started yelling to himself on the mound, which he does when he is, to quote this team, tremendously locked in. But I think it all around balances out to average. I know we wanted him to be the closer going into the year. I know he did close out the very first game of the year. But hopefully he can continue to be, you know, kind of play the role of a setup man or something similar to that. Okay. Our next man we have is Sogi. Or, well, Nick Sogard, aka Sogi. Definitely goes in average. Not much else to say. Kind of had to move him up towards the end of the season because of injuries. But the thing is that Sogar is just a complete ball player. You know, he's pretty he's pretty whatever offensively, very middle of the road. Defensively, he's actually pretty good. He's a good fielder. I think that on another MLB team, he'd maybe get the nod as an everyday starter. Unfortunately, that's not the role we're asking for him in Boston. He does have no power behind the plate. I still don't think has hit a home run in his major league career, but definitely a solid player all around. And he actually showed up during the postseason, which pretty much nobody did. So Sogard's definitely on my good side. He's definitely an average ball player. And I think if we can't get our shit together with the middle infield, there's a chance I'll be playing a few games at second next year. Okay, you guys probably have no idea who this dude is. This is Robert Stock. I actually saw him pitch because we tried to put him in. I don't know if you guys remember the Sunday night baseball game in the Bronx against the Yankees back in June. I went to that game. We were up 11-5 going into the ninth inning. We put in Robert Stock because we're like, we're up by 6 runs. We should close the game out. He pitches like shit. He gives up a home run to Judge, then allows 2 more base runners on, forces Chapman into the game. We've already established there's no place on this tier list for people who want to force Chapman into games because they're bad relievers. Robert Stock is one of them. That was one of 2 pitching appearances he had. He had another one against Toronto in April where he also gave up multiple earned runs. Nothing else to say. He's a terrible pitcher. Trevor Story, going in elite. Don't care what you say. He's a complete anti-Savant guy in the sense that if you look up his Savant stats... Let's wait for them to load. Oh yeah, we are living in a sea of blue here. Baseball Savant hates him. Why is he elite? Well, for one, he did bat 263, which is pretty solid. But more importantly, 25 home runs, which resulted in... Well, it doesn't have his RBIs up here, but he was in the 90s in his RBIs. He led the team in RBIs. He had 25 home runs. It felt like every time you needed a big win or a big hit, he was coming through in all these high-leverage situations. He was a leader for the team. He stayed healthy. He only played 163 games his first 3 years in Boston. This year alone, he played how many games? He played... Well, it has his plate appearances, but he played, I believe, 157, 158. So he played pretty much every game. May was really rough. In May, he was batting like below 200. We were talking about DFAing him. And then he batted like 280 the rest of the season. His stats would be so much better if it just weren't for the month of May. But he was a leader. He was clutch. He had so many big moments and big hits for this team. And, he stepped up in the postseason. Like, he probably should have had a grand slam. That flyout he hit was further than the ball he actually did hit for a home run earlier in the game. But you know what? Trevor Story's such a crucial element to this team. He showed you just how big of a role he can play when he remains healthy. I think he is far and away elite, and if it weren't for Garrett Crochet, Trevor Story would probably be your MVP of the 2025 Red Sox. Great year. He'll probably opt in for next year, I hope, and I'd really like to see how he plays next year as well. Next off, Peyton Tolley, the Piglet, as some might call him. And unfortunately for the Piglet, he just didn't have a great outing in MLB. I'm going to have to put him in below average. His first start was electric, where he struck out, 8 guys, only gave up earned runs because Greg Weissler comes into games and gives up runners who he inherits. But ultimately, I don't think that Peyton Tolley was ready to be moved up to the majors. Yes, fastball is electric. He throws 100, but he can't reliably count on throwing his off speed and breaking pitches for strikes. And to batters, that means no matter 100 is fast, but they're going to be hitting 100 if they know it's coming because they know that his other pitches are uncompetitive. And that was what he really struggled with, allowing a lot of hard contact off of his fastball, because everyone knew it was coming because his other pitches were terrible. And I think that he just needs to work on developing his secondary pitches. But I think for him, it was we moved him up before he maybe should have been moved up. Okay. Home stretch, we only have about 10 more people to go through. Next off, Abraham Toro. You know, the thing about Abraham Toro is he started off really, really good, and he was really good for like over a month. And then he just became so much of a liability at the end that I have to put him in the he sucks category. You know, his final month in the majors, he was batting below 200, which, if you're playing first base, we need you to be producing offensively. He had a few miscues defensively. I think the big one to point with is the fact that he pretty much tore Hunter Dobbins' ACL by giving him a terrible throw leading him into first base that forced him to really awkwardly lunge up with his hand while trying to hit the bag. That pissed me off. Worst was when, the Baltimore game where the bases loaded 1 out. All you have to do is not ground into a double play. And what does Abraham Toro do? He grounds into a double play. And for me, that was when I was like, we can't have this guy being shit. I think there's a point where he had like 1.5 WAR after starting off really hot. And he finished the season a replacement level player because of how bad he was in the final month of his, in the final month of his stint with the team. Okay. Greg Weisert's another controversial guy. I have to put him in average because ultimately I do think he was the definition of average. Like, if you look up his Baseball Savant page, it's average to below average. I'm going to put him in average. He only put up a 3.28 ERA. For him, the problem was pitching in high leverage situations. He actually finished the year with 9 blown saves, which was second most in the majors, only behind Tanner Scott. And the reason why is because every time you put him in with runners on base, it feels like he'd allow them to score. And every time you put him in a big position, it feels like he'd allow runners to score. And then you'd put him in when we're up by 5, and he'd look really good, and nobody would be able to hit, his off-speed pitches, and you'd strike them out. All around, still an average season. Still won the Verdugo trade. Weisert's given us a lot more production over the past 2 years than Verdugo did for the Yankees. So, there's that. But I'm still kind of pissed with Weissert because it feels like he just couldn't do well when the moment was big. Okay. That's Garrett Whitlock. We're moving him to elite. He started off rough. There are times where we expected him to be like he was in 2021 and go 2 innings at a time, and typically he fell apart when that happened. Obviously, he had that big blow-up start in late June against the Angels where he gave up 4 runs in 1 inning, and that was literally like a third of the runs he gave up all year were in that one game. But then July hit, and Garrett Whitlock was absolutely elite. I believe the key stat to focus on with him, well, first of all, look at the absolute sea of red here. Great Baseball Savant page. But I believe after July 6th, he gave up a singular earned run. He put up a .36 ERA from July 6th to the end of the regular season. I think he was the best setup man in baseball, and you paired him with the best closer in baseball, and that meant that whenever we were up by even 1 run going into the 8th inning, we felt like we were going to win the game because Whitlock turned back the clock and put up his 2021 numbers. I mean, you compare these, he was statistically a better pitcher this year than he was in 2021. Only put up a 2.25 ERA, struck out nearly 100 batters. Just a great season, and it was just so sad to see it all fall apart in the playoffs because you pushed him to go 2 innings, and as Whitlock said, he got tired at the end, and that was why he wasn't able to throw strikes and started walking batters. But Whitlock was such an important aspect of the bullpen. The fact that he was able to stay healthy the entire year after, coming off from missing 2024 with an elbow injury, this is a great season from Whitlock, absolutely deserving of our elite tier. All right, almost done. Justin Wilson. I want to put Justin Wilson in very good, but I can't because he kind of had a bit of a September slip-up. I'm going to put him in the solid tier. He was good for pretty much most of the year. You didn't know what you were going to get out of a 37-year-old reliever, and I think he definitely got more than what you were asking for from him. I think he put up a mid-3 ERA by the season's end. He was elite against lefties. Unfortunately, he couldn't pitch against righties. Righties batted over 300 against him. But he was dominant against lefties. He had, I think, a pretty solid fastball. He only threw it at 94, but from what I remember, he was striking out quite a few guys with it. And then he just kind of got tired at the end of the season in September. You obviously had that Dalton Varsho Grand Slam where he clearly made a mistake because nobody would ever try to throw a middle fastball on an 0-2 count. But I can't talk that from him. He had a solid year. It was a good year from a 37-year-old Justin Wilson. All right. I'm actually wondering where we should put Wink. I want to put Josh Winkowski in. Yeah, I want to put him in He Sucks, but I have to put him in too small sample size because to be honest, I don't remember Winkowski pitching this year. Apparently he did, maybe like for a few innings in April, but there's nothing to say about him. He did not pitch. Next off, Connor Wong. Connor Wong sucks. Terrible year. We don't have to go over it. You know, the fact that he batted under 200, didn't hit any home runs. Defense was slightly better at catching, but wasn't great. Just, this was an embarrassing season from Wong, and we now might be in a position where we have to be like, do we need to get a new backup catcher next year because Wong was terrible? Well, I will say, he apparently fixed Aroldis Chapman. This is the one good thing he did. I like the guy. Connor Wong's a nice guy, but I can't believe this is one of the guys you got from Mookie. Just an awful season from Connor Wong. Yoshida. So I originally went through and made this tier list on my own 2 weeks before the season ended. I put Yoshida in He Sucks, and then he got really hot and moved himself all the way up to average. Yeah, you know what you're going to get from Yoshida. He's pretty much a platoon DH. He plays left field. Not that well, though. I think he maybe only had a few innings at left field this year. And, yeah, it was whatever defensively. When he's hot, he's really hot. He doesn't strike out, but for him the problem is getting the ball in the air. When he gets the ball in the air, he's really good. When he keeps it on the ground, he just grounds out. But he started to get the ball in the air towards the end of the year. He looked really good, finished this season with around a 260 batting average. When he stepped up in the playoffs, he was like the only guy who was getting hits. He had the big go-ahead knock in Game 1. And then in Game 2, he was also good. And then in Game 3, he had 3 hits off of Cam Schlittler, and nobody else could hit off of him. So, he redeemed himself. I still don't know if we want him on the team next year because we're paying him $18 million a year, and he's a glorified DH. And I know that Breslow kind of wants to have a revolving door with your surplus outfielders for that DH position. So we'll see. Final player is Jose De Leon. Literal last-minute addition. He pitched a singular game, the final game of the regular season, where we just needed somebody to pitch to keep everyone fresh for the postseason. And for a guy with an 0-9 ERA, or an 0-9 record in AAA, he went 6 2/3 innings of 3-run ball and picked up the win. But we're putting him in too small sample size because he pitched one game. Kind of pissed at him, because if he pitched poorly and we lost, then we would have been on the side of the bracket where we were playing the Guardians, and then we probably would have beaten them. But once again, not entertaining those counterfactuals. He pitched one game. I can't put him anywhere else. Alright, now on to management stuff. Cora gets a solid. I know a lot of people were calling for him to get fired earlier in the season, and admittedly deservedly so when we had those 2 games where, Ramon Vasquez was calling them and managed the bullpen beautifully in both of those 2 games against the Mets. And we were like, we wish Cora could do that. But Cora's a really solid manager. He does a really good job at building rapport with the team and with the players. And in the postseason, he managed Game 1 incredibly. I think he made a risky gamble that didn't pan out in Game 2, but I can understand why he made it. And, Game 3 was kind of just out of his control when the defense wasn't doing anything productive. But I think all around solid. Next off is Craig Breslow. Craig Breslow is a really complicated one because there were a lot of good things he did, and there were a lot of bad things that he did. And we'll start off with the good, and we'll give him some credit because there are quite a few good things he did. During the offseason, what did he do? During the offseason, he traded for Garrett Crochet, the MVP on this list. He signed Bregman, who's in the elite category. He signed Chapman, who's in the elite category. And then he also signed Narvaez, traded for Narvaez, who's in the really good category. So he picked up many of your best players during this offseason. He also signed Roman Anthony to a large-term contract, And remember, Roman Anthony's in the elite category. So all these important things he's doing, to acquire great talent and to maintain that talent. Those are the good things he did. Then there's the bad, and there are two things that stick out. One is the Rafi trade, which was pretty much all Breslow's move. And the way we know that was because when they got asked about it at the end of season press conference, you had Sam Kennedy pretty much defer that question to Breslow in that was your idea, not mine kind of way. And that was a terrible move. I know Breslow said, I think that at the end of the season you'll find that we won more games than we otherwise would have. I don't think that's true. We made the playoffs, but let's not pretend that the reason why we started winning was because of the power of friendship. It wasn't. It was because the pitching decided to get really good, and also Roman Anthony stepped up. People are saying, yeah, you couldn't have Roman Anthony and Rafi Devers on the same roster. Yeah, I don't care what you say about roster flexibility. You should have found a way to make it happen. That was a terrible idea. That was a terrible trade. The other terrible thing he did was at the deadline, obviously not getting Joe Ryan. I know it sounds like the story was he made an effort to get Joe Ryan, but the Twins were kind of just fucking around with him, and he didn't realize it until it was too late. And then he panicked and got Dustin May and tried to defend it by saying, we think that he could add a lot to the team, which no, he can't because Dustin May's terrible, and the guy had never pitched 100 innings in a season before since 2019. Why'd you think he was going to be effective for you? The fact that he didn't get like a right-hand power bat or get a first baseman at the deadline, yeah, he signed Nathaniel Lowe, but like that was, if he didn't, that would be like looking a gift horse in the mouth. And looking a gift horse in the mouth. That was kind of like making up for the fact that he didn't get a first baseman at the deadline. But I think when you look at all those things, the good and the bad, I think it balances out to also solid. It wasn't very good, but I think the good moves that he made outweighed the bad moves. I still think the Rafi Devers trade is one of the most confounding decisions that this team has made in a long time. But yeah, I don't really want to be remaining pissed off about it for like the remainder of the night. We're just gonna move on. John Henry, I'm just putting John Henry in average. Yeah, there wasn't much he did as an owner. I know the only storylines surrounding John Henry this year were when he personally flew out to Kansas City to meet with Rafi, and obviously that didn't fix the issue. I feel like there's not much more to say about John Henry. And finally, at the end of all things, we ask ourselves, how would we rate the Boston Red Sox in 2025? And I know that when we did the midseason tier list ratings, we put them in below average because given their expectations, the fact that they were a below 500 team at that time was awful. Of course, now we did not end up finishing as a below 500 team. We finished 89 we finished 89 and 73, 16 games above 500. We made the postseason for the first time in 4 years, and that was our goal. And we had to play a Yankees team that won 94 games in the regular season. Should we have beaten them? Yeah, we should have beaten them. But I think that this was a really amazing step in the right direction for a young and talented Red Sox team. I think that they've kind of laid the foundation for hopefully, many more years of success in postseason baseball. And for that, I think that overall, the Red Sox were a very solid team in 2025. They weren't great. They weren't very good. But they did make the playoffs. They were the best team that we've seen in nearly half a decade. And it was super fun to watch them. I think that that's my tier list. I think before I wrap things up, I just want to give a big thank you to everyone who has made being a Red Sox fan this year as incredible as it was. To all the players and to the coaching staff for obviously playing the grueling 162 game schedule plus the 3 postseason games you ended up playing. To Dave O'Brien and Lou Merlone in the Nesson booth because I pretty much tuned into their broadcast every night, and I think they're both great people. I'd love to listen to them every day. To Will Middlebrooks and Will Fleming and Mike Monaco at the WEEI broadcast. I think their commentary is also fantastic. I don't really get to watch it as much because I'm mainly watching the games live on Nesson, but whenever I'm in the car, I love to tune in and hear what they have to say about the game. And then to the the folks at the Section 10 podcast, to Jared Carabas, Tyler Milliken, Coley Mick, and Steve Peralt. Um, it was really fun to engage with the team in a new way by listening to your guys' podcast. It was incredible. I learned so much. You guys are super fun. I love how dedicated you guys are to the team and to your community. I think it's great that the fan base kind of has something that they can unite around with the kind of events and stuff that you guys provide. So a big thank you to all of those people for making this Red Sox season as much fun as it was. I'm so happy that I was able to watch a majority of the games this year despite a busy schedule. And we will be back here in 2026. I will be trying to put out more Red Sox content next year if time permits. But until now, I've been talking for 75 minutes, and I don't think many people will have stuck around for the end. So for those of you who have, thank you. And as always, take care.